everyone, and welcome to Book Study 20 of Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers in Nature and Humans. That's you. Written down by Dr. Eddie Villamoria, synthesized, collaborated, and explained by Dr. Eddie Villamoria. Today, we're going to talk about symbolism and the ancient teachings, and I'm really excited about today's lesson. So if you are ready, let us begin. You may have noticed, well, both of you who are here may have noticed that we were not here last week. We were in Crete, and it was absolutely unbelievable, so beautiful. We went to Knossos, Knossos, and the labyrinth, that's where the labyrinth was. We didn't see the labyrinth, though. Eddie talks about the importance of symbolism and myth and legends and fairy tales all the time, and many who study the ancient teachings say the same. Today's Unfolding Consciousness book study, number 20, will be on symbolism, the language of the mystery teachings. We're in volume 3 of Unfolding Consciousness, which is Exploring the Living Universe. Again, the intelligent powers in nature and humans. And this one is gazing through the telescope. Man is the measure of all things. Remember, there are ebooks on the way. They're being constructed as we speak. Those are so desperately needed. We have audio versions on the way, study guides, condensed versions. Thank you for being here. To me, this is a very important thing to do. I want to give this to you so you have access to it too. Remember, your comments and questions are always welcome. We can even build an entire video about what you want to talk about, what you bring up. So you are included. You are the sole reason for these Unfolding Consciousness book studies. It is you. That's the whole point of me being here every Sunday. So our study notes that you will find along the borders of the pages for today's book study. Now, we won't be covering the entire chapter. I try to keep these under 20 minutes. But our notes are, figurative language unlocks the hidden layers of meaning. Proverbs and parables, allegories, similes, and metaphors. And distinguishing models, similes, and metaphors from reality. Analogies, symbols, and icons. The Ouroboros or Ouroboros symbol, its significance, and justification for oral transmission of teachings. Esoteric dimensions, also this is very important, esoteric dimensions, as above so below, they are not geographical nor are they linear. So let's begin with a quote from William Q. Judge. He writes, "A symbol, to be properly so called, must be contained in the idea or ideas which it is intended to represent. As a symbol of a house could never be the prow of a boat or the wing of a bird, but must be contained somewhere within the form of a house itself. That is, it must be an actual part, chosen to represent or stand for the whole. It need not be the whole, but it may be a lower form or species used as the representative of a higher of the same kind." The word symbol is derived from the Greek words meaning to throw with, or that is actually to throw together. To be a just and correct symbol, it should be such that the moment it is seen by one versed in symbolism, its meaning and application become easily apparent. And from Manly P. Hall, every visible object, every abstract thought, every emotional reaction is but the symbol of an eternal principle. Every form is a symbol, and every symbol the tomb of an eternal verity. Through education, spiritual, mental, moral, and physical, man will learn to release truths from their lifeless coverings. So, in Chapter 1 of Volume 3, we take a look at symbolism, one of the universal keys to wisdom, and the expression of the mystery teachings. And this is a subject that abounds in misconceptions and bewilderment. And we commence with a clear statement. Eddie commences. I'm restating what Eddie has written in here. A clear statement about the subtle differences between terms used in figurative language. For example, symbols, allegories, and similes. Thereafter, we show how universal symbols like the labyrinth at Gnosis, the forest, and the philosopher's stone, and a few others, reveal the inner nature of man and his evolution when the meaning hidden in the symbol is exposed and understood. This chapter also includes a warning about the serious perils and ghastly rituals such as animal sacrifice that ensue when symbols are interpreted literally or misinterpreted and therefore misused or plainly abused. Our keywords today, and we'll cover some but not all: symbolism, analogy, labyrinth at Gnosis, forest, fish, tarot cards, chess game, alchemical marriage, philosopher's stone, Beethoven's Fidelio, dangers of misuse of symbols, animal sacrifice, and so much more. So why does the literature of religion, esoteric philosophy, and occultism abound in the use of metaphorical and flowery language? For the simple reason that ordinary language that is married to a linear intellectual mode of thought, which is well suited to conveying precise information, objective facts, and scientific theories, is a poor medium for conveying the subjective realms of experience and deep truths that are necessarily beyond words and judgment and reasoning. Parables and allegories, metaphors and similes, and above all, symbols and analogies are the only means of unlocking the meaning behind what in truth is indescribable. Although there is a bit of overlap in the nature of these metaphorical language forms, there are also important differences, particularly in the function they perform, which Eddie covers here in Chapter 1 of Volume 3 of Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers in Nature and You, humans, without becoming too academic. Aiming for clarity of meaning. A proverb, you've heard proverb. A proverb, which literally means words put forth, is a short, concise saying in common use, one that embodies a general truth. By contrast, a parable, which means of drawing analogies, is a short narrative of imagined events intended to illustrate a moral or a spiritual lesson. It differs from a fable because in fables, there's animals, plants, inanimate objects, forces of nature as characters, whereas parables have human characters. An example of a parable from the Bible is, for a good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, making the point that a man's deeds, or rather than his outwardly spoken words, his deeds provide the truest test of his character. Meaning, an immoral character is unlikely to perform noble deeds. The basic danger with interpreting parables, as indeed all symbolic language forms, is mistaking their function and their context. Too much can be read into the specific details of the story, taking it literally, rather than upon the response it is intended to evoke and the meaning it is intended to convey. Parables, then, are the means of conveying the esoteric meaning in exoteric, meaning commonly known speech, therefore to be understood and told to the masses. However, that does not mean that so-called common folk do not have eyes to see and ears to hear, and that parables cannot be understood at many different levels. An allegory, which means speaking otherwise, is a vehicle for conveying truth by representing an abstract or spiritual meaning through concrete or material forms. For example, the Cretan legend of the Minotaur is an allegorical representation of the unbridled, carnal, lower nature passions in man, in the form of a mythological creature with the head of a bull and the body of a man. I was just in Crete last week, and that's why we didn't have a book study, and I went to Knossos, and it was mind-numbing to see 7,000 years of human history. There is so much there that we still don't know. We think we know, but we don't know. Humanity is much older than what we currently understand, and there is much, much more to our stories. So regarding similes, the emphasis is to aid the understanding of a subject by using words like or as to compare the subject to something else. A metaphor is a similar thing to a simile, but it compares the subject to something else without an explanation or an example. The comparison is implied or stated directly. In both cases, a descriptive term is applied in the imagination, but not in the literal sense. An example of a widely accepted simile in mainstream neuroscience nowadays is the brain is like a wet computer. Now, the equivalent metaphor would be to refer to the brain as a wet computer. A more meaningful simile from classical science comes from the English chemist, physicist, and meteorologist John Dalton, whose model of atoms was solid, indestructible units, somewhat like billiard balls, pool balls. Billiard ball atoms would be a ridiculous metaphor, but to state that atoms behave like billiard balls is a meaningful simile for explaining how they operate. Note, however, that neither similes nor metaphors are models. A model, the original meaning coming from measure, is a representation of the real thing in terms of an analytical, meaning mathematical, or physical, like drawings or plans or structures, replica. A model is constructed, therefore, to represent and predict those characteristics of the performance of real things that interest us. For example, if a computer were used to simulate and study certain aspects of brain functioning, that would constitute a particular model of certain functions of the brain, certain functions under specified conditions with underlying assumptions. But it is obvious that a model is not an exact replica. Therefore, some dimensions, aspects, or attributes of the real thing cannot be shown. So a model is always limited in one way or another and can never be a complete substitute for the real thing in itself. All of this is obvious, but Eddie is laboring this point because just as a metaphor is sometimes confused with a model is often confused with the reality that it is intended to represent. For example, a map is frequently confused with the territory. This confusion is illustrated throughout unfolding consciousness when covering the current idea from mainstream science that the brain is essentially a wet biological computer. We now come to the most significant forms of figurative language used in esotericism and occultism, analogies and symbols. Analogies and symbols. In an analogy, there is a correspondence or partial similarity between two or more things, meaning they are related by a common principle. For example, the similarity between human birth and the birth of the cosmos, which is covered in Chapter 8 of Volume 1 of Unfolding Consciousness, both which follow similar principles, although obviously worked out through very, very different means and forms. A symbol is something such as a figure or a character or a picture regarded as representing something else, especially in the nature of an idea or quality. Now, musical notes and the letters that represent the chemical elements are obvious examples of this. However, there is a deeper aspect to consider. Symbolism is the illustrated representation of an idea or a thought. I'll say that again. Symbolism is the illustrated representation of an idea or a thought. Ancient writing initially had no characters, but a symbol generally stood for a whole phrase or a sentence. A symbol is thus a recorded parable, as Blavatsky explains, and a parable a spoken symbol. Egyptian hieroglyphics and the Chinese written languages are examples of symbolic writing. For the student of the mystery teachings, which is you, symbols are the most powerful means of unlocking the hidden depths and meaning and releasing intuition. I'm going to say that again. For the student of the mystery teachings, that's you, symbols are the most powerful means of unlocking hidden depths and meaning and releasing intuition. The reason being is that the meaning attached to a symbol may be taken and understood at many levels, physically, intellectually, and spiritually. And what is revealed is entirely dependent on the context and, crucially, the degree of awakened intuition of the seeker. One such powerful example is the symbol of the Ouroboros, or Ouroboros. And some of you will be familiar with this ancient symbol from the seal of the modern Theosophical Society, depicting a snake swallowing or biting its tail. The basic idea is that of constant regeneration and eternal cyclicity. Everything moves in cycles through the renewal of forms. However, there are many hidden layers of meaning. For example, in psychology, Carl Jung interpreted the Ouroboros as having a classic significance to the human psyche. And the German Jungian psychologist Erich Neumann describes the Ouroboros as a representation of the pre-ego dawn state, depicting the corresponding infancy experience both of mankind and the individual child. Now, in science, Bernard Carr, British professor of mathematics and astronomy at Queen Mary University of London, I love him and his work. I respect him greatly. He interprets the cosmic Ouroboros as depicting the hierarchy of scales from the largest, as in cosmology, to the smallest, as in quantum theory, and their interconnection, which are all part and parcel of the triumphant discoveries of modern physics. A triumph involving not only the objects, but also the forces of the universe. However, Carr also states candidly that the missing element in the Ouroboros is mind. Therefore, a complete theory must move from the matter-centric standpoint of current physics, meaning only the physical world, towards a more extended form of physics, which includes mind and consciousness and perhaps entails higher dimensions of reality. Note, however, that symbols are not the same as icons. An icon, such as the print image on your printer, has a fixed meaning, but a symbol applies at many levels and unfolds a multi-layered meaning, as just explained. More on this found in Volume 1, Chapter 7, page 190, if you want more insight into the distinction between icons and symbols in religious context. While the greatest minds of the Jewish and Christian worlds have realized that the Bible is a book of allegories. The Bible is a book of allegories. Very few seem to have taken the trouble to investigate the symbols and the parables. They take it literally. When Moses introduced his mysteries, he is said to have given to a chosen few initiates certain oral teachings which could never be written, but were to be preserved from one generation to the next by word of mouth. Those instructions were in the form of philosophical keys, by means of which the allegories were made to reveal their hidden significance. These mystic keys to the sacred writings were called by the Jews the Kabbalah or Kabbalah. In the modern world, says Manly P. Hall, we seem to have forgotten the existence of those unwritten teachings, which explained satisfactorily the apparent contradictions of the written scriptures. Nor do we remember that the pagans appointed their two-faced Janus as the custodian of the key to the temple of wisdom. Now, Janus has been recast into St. Peter, so often symbolized as holding in his hand the key to the gate of heaven. The gold and silver keys of God's vicar on earth, the Pope, symbolize this secret doctrine, which, when properly understood, unlocks the treasure chest of the Christian and Jewish Kabbalah. Here we are, the cone, a symbol to clarify the meaning. You may have already discovered that the esoteric literature is full of terms like upper, lower, middle, and similar terms like up, down, center, above, below, central. These are not linear distances along points of a compass. They refer entirely to the distance from or closeness to the spiritual source, the spiritual altitude, so to say. So we're going to use this cone to illustrate the point. So we're going to stand a cone on its base. So for you, I'm going to show you. Oh, okay, there you go. You can see it vertically looking downwards. The apex is seen as a point in the exact center of the circumference formed by the base. Now view the same cone horizontally in elevation. The apex is seen above the base. Now, if the apex signifies the source, then above indicates a degree of proximity to source, and below indicates a degree of distance from source. Being in the actual center, source is in the actual center, being the various locations along the radii, the middle of the circle, from the apex center towards the circumference. In other words, let's look at the point in the circle. So, pertaining to esoteric philosophy and scripture, up should therefore be considered as towards the center and down as towards the circumference. The center being spirit and the circumference being matter. So by this reasoning, up is toward spirit along an ascending scale, okay, of spirituality, and down is towards matter along a descending scale of materiality. So that's it. The cone there, looking at above, so below, in the middle, also flat, the point and the circle. So looking at that, the point and the circle. This is spirit, this is matter. And then you have the cone. Let me see if I can do that again. There you go. So there you go. All of this means something. It all means something, and it's beautifully explained in this amazing book, which is a 4-volume set called Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Power in Nature and Humans. We were looking at the first chapter in volume 3, and volume 3, really quick, is Gazing Through the Telescope. Man is the measure of all things. Brilliantly explained, written down, collaborated, and synthesized by Dr. Eddie Villamoria. These are just my way of trying to give back. I recognize what's in these texts. I see this as a very important textbook for humanity. It's not about the sale of the book. I want to be able to get this out there so you can have access to it. These teachings are out there, and they're referenced and they're collated here in this text, but they're out there on the internet. If you wish to get them, they're there. Listen to your heart, follow that vibe. If you'd like to get a copy for your library, you're welcome to. You can have them use this UC book study. You get 20% off. We do these book studies every Sunday. I do my best, and I'm so grateful to have you here. I know it's an intimate crowd, as I said earlier, just both of you are here. It doesn't matter. Whoever's meant to be here will be here. And again, you'll see Eddie on some amazing podcasts out this last month. We had Indie ETV with Peggy Robinson, Alex Ferrari, Next Level Soul, Jeff Mara, the Jeff Mara podcast. There are more coming up on new Thinking Aloud is on the way, Love Covered Life. There's lots more happening. So thank you for being here. And I'm sorry I missed you last week. We'll be back again next Sunday for more Unfolding Consciousness, a point and the circle and the cone, symbolism. All right, I love you. I'll see you next week. Mwah.